Hey, my name's Dan, and in this video we're going to be talking about some things that might catch you out if you're moving from Figma to Framer. So let's just jump right in. Okay, so first up we're going to talk about some UX differences between the two. One thing you're going to notice if you use a mouse is that the scroll direction is inverted. So if I'm in Figma and I Command plus scroll back, you'll see that it zooms in. But if I go over to Framer and do the same thing, see that it zooms out. So if you want to change that, you just go over here, go down to preferences and say reverse zoom direction. But while we're in this preference panel, let's have a look at some other options. Something I recommend turning on is this auto switch to layers feature. So Framer has these three tabs: pages, layers, and assets. And by default, when I make a selection on the canvas, nothing changes over here. But if I select auto switch to layers, my selection is highlighted in the layers panel. I just prefer this. It saves you having to jump back and forward between the three tabs. If we go back into preferences, there's another interesting option you might want to turn on. It's this use direct selection option. So by default, the selection works the same as Figma. If I hold Command while hovering over something, it highlights the child I'm hovering over. But if I release Command, it'll allow me to select the parent. Now, use direct selection sort of makes this child behavior the default behavior. So I'd never have to click Command. It automatically selects the thing that's right underneath my mouse cursor. But it brings me neatly to the other UX difference between Figma and Framer, and that's this double-clicking behavior. So if I double-click on a component, this blog post component, it drills in and takes me to that component. But if I double-click on the background, it takes me back. Now, this behavior is cool if you know that it's happening, but Framer doesn't really tell you that that's how it works. And it's going to catch you out sometimes. The way it catches me out is if I'm trying to deselect something and I accidentally double click on the background just to deselect it, and it takes you back up. So number 2 is document structure. Figma is pretty unopinionated about the way you should structure a document. You can see on this page I've got a mix of the final designs and the master components along with their instances all sort of mixed together, laid out however I want. We have pages in Figma, but they're just sort of like loose organizational tools. They don't actually mean anything. On the other hand, Framer is very opinionated about how you structure a document. Each page is a URL in your website, and the artboards within it are different breakpoints. So you can set how your website looks at different sizes. Components also live in their own space. If I want to edit the master blog post, I have to double click and drill down into the master component. And inside here, you can see all the variants. This means you do a lot of drilling down and drilling back up in Framer. It's a not so infinite canvas. And I think a lot of people using Framer for the first time expect to be able to do what you can do in Figma, which is just sort of mix and match things as you like. Number 3 is the way you override components. So Figma is super flexible. Say I want to come in and change the title of this blog post. I can just select the text and type something in. I can also set up a component override and change the title that way. I can even drill down into nested components and switch out their variants. With Framer, on the other hand, components are sort of sealed by default. So you can see if I select this component, I'm not able to select any of its children without navigating to the master component. That means if I want to change the title of this blog post, I have to set up something called a variable. The way I do that is I select the title text. If I come down to this content area and press the plus button, create variable, I'm just going to make it a plain text variable. You can see it's pre-filled the name. If I just click away and go back to the instance, you can see that I can pass a new title down. I can also set up variables for nested components. So if I select this nested author component, I can set up a variable for the variant. So create variable, I'm going to call it author. Click away. And now we can select the author from the instance. Now, of course, I have to do that for almost everything in this blog post component. So it does mean that wiring stuff up in Framer can take a lot longer than compared to Figma. So the fourth difference is the way component variants work. So in Figma, we've set up two variants of this blog post component. One is featured and one isn't. And the only difference is this little featured tag in the top right corner. But if we look at the default variant, we can see that that featured tag is nowhere to be found. And that's because Figma will let variants have completely different contents. If we jump over to Framer, we can see the same two variants. But something you might notice is that this featured tag is also present but invisible in the default variant. I can actually turn it on and off and you'll see. And this is because in order to make transitions work between multiple variants, Framer has to store information about all the other variants in each variant. Framer needs to know what the start position of that featured tag is going to be, and it does that by storing it in all the variants. Now, don't worry too much about this, but if you find yourself wondering why there are some invisible layers in your variant, don't delete them, because it will delete them from every other variant. Something else we need to talk about is that Framer has this concept of a primary variant. And that means that any changes I make to this primary Michael variant over here, so say I want to change the gap, all the other variants will inherit that change unless I go into one of them and override it. And you can see that change isn't being propagated back to the primary. It's a one-directional relationship. Now I can pretty easily update the primary or reset this override to restore the relationship. But if you're not expecting it, this behavior is a little odd. But I promise it's super useful when you need to update a bunch of different variants at once. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this video. There are, of course, a few more subtle differences between the two tools, but these are the ones that consistently catch people out when jumping from Figma to Framer. Now, I'm going to be making a bunch more beginner Framer videos, so if you're interested in that, make sure you stick around.